This morning we have Landen talking to us, and so I don't want to take any of his time. So Landen, it's all yours.
All right. Let me get my screen shared here. So before I get started, I'm going to throw Phil and John under the bus because they're the ones that brought this to me and thought it may be an interesting concept to talk about. Um, this is going to be, I'll preface this by saying this is going to be a fairly technical talk. Um, there's no way to kind of explain this concept without getting into the weeds of some technical aspects and understanding some of the technology behind this, which really opens up the ideas and the creativity on where some of this stuff may go in the future. And it may seem hard to understand at first, and I'm certainly willing to answer whatever questions that you guys may have. But the whole point of this is to just not necessarily encourage you guys to go out exploring this or move platforms and how you publish your things or anything like that. It's to just kind of talk about a subject that is interesting and kind of on the forefront and could be a place where publishing goes in the next 3 to 5 years, and to just be on the lookout and to be aware of some of the things that are happening, to be on the lookout for new platforms that open up, new opportunities that open up, and to just be aware of what's happening in technology around us. And so um, thanks to Phil and John for kind of bringing this topic up. And here we go. Let's get into it. So this everybody can see my screen, right? Give me a thumbs up if you can see, read. Okay. So we're going to be talking about NFTs, explaining NFTs. That may be a buzzword that you guys have heard in news articles or people talking about, or maybe you've not even heard of it. But in the last year, there's been a lot of talk and been a lot of publications about NFTs and a lot of money being thrown around buying NFTs and different things. But what I want to talk about is the possibility for NFTs to change indie publishing. Can they change indie publishing? How can they change indie publishing? Um, and some of that stuff. So we're going to talk about what NFTs are. We're going to talk about the tech behind NFTs. You need to be able to understand a little bit about the technology before you understand how this is going to apply to publishing and how it can open up a lot of different aspects in publishing. And like I said before, this is going to be a pretty technical talk, and so I'll try to go slow and overview some things. The technical part is going to be in the beginning, and if you have questions, I will try to just monitor, like if someone needs to raise their hand, just hit the raise hand icon. If you have questions or whatever, feel free to interrupt me, because understanding the technology is kind of crucial to seeing where this goes. So let's talk about, I'm sure most of you have probably heard about blockchain technology and or Bitcoin. So we need to understand that a little bit before we understand NFTs. So let's talk about what blockchain technology is. So basically, definition up here, it's an open and distributed ledger that can record transactions between two parties efficiently and in a verifiable and permanent way. So what exactly does that mean? Basically, when you think of Bitcoin, you need to think of it as a giant checkbook ledger. That's the easiest way to think about it. It's a way to permanently look at debits and credits that have been settled between two or multiple parties. That ledger is open. Anyone can look at the debits and credits of that ledger for any address that is on the network, and it's distributed across the world, meaning the same copy of it is on hundreds of thousands of servers and computers across the world. So It's robust. It's distributed. It's a way for people to exchange, I guess, a store of value in transactions that can be looked at, verified, copied down, scrutinized, all of that stuff in an open ledger kind of way. So I think of this as I can remember before we had credit cards and all of that stuff. I can remember my parents sitting down at the kitchen table balancing their checkbook. They would write checks at the grocery store or whatever the case may be, and I'm sure that you guys have done that before too. Looking at where they wrote a check and if that check had been credited yet or debited, and they would go through their checkbook and figure out like, okay, I wrote this check, has it cleared yet? Okay, I got to take that out of my funds. That's basically what the blockchain technology is. It's just a massive open distributed ledger. It also has consensus, which means that the transactions that are included in that ledger have to be agreed to by participants in the blockchain before they're entered into the ledger. So what that means is all of these computers have to agree that all of these debits and credits make sense before they get captured into that ledger. The reason that that's important is because before now, there hadn't been a good way without a third party intermediary to verify all of that stuff on an open ledger. Now we can look at Tom's account and my account, and if Tom wants to send me 1 Bitcoin, the ledger says Tom has that available to spend, and then he's going to spend it and send it to me. And everybody agrees that that transaction can take place. That is enforceable. That's the consensus that happens on the network, and everybody agrees that Tom has the funds to send to me. So everybody has to agree to that. So not only is it distributed, it's also really secure because everybody is agreeing upon the transactions that are happening, which means that you can't spend what you don't have. I can't send what I don't have, and no one has to. There's no third party that has to verify that to me. There's no bank that has to verify that I have that in my account to spend. There's no third party that needs to verify that. It's verified on the open ledger where everybody can see it. So that's another thing. It's immutable. Okay, so it cannot be changed. When blocks are mined into the blockchain, it cannot be changed. You can't undo it, which is a good thing for security, right? No one can go back and say, no, Tom, you didn't send that, but he did. So it can't change. And it's transparent. So anyone can download a copy of the blockchain and they can look through it. They could verify the transactions. So that's the blockchain. That's Bitcoin in a nutshell. It's quite a bit more complicated than that, but in general, that's what it is on a surface level. Does that make sense to everybody? Is there any questions that people have that don't quite make sense, or any hands that gonna need to be raised? I don't see any. Oh, Kim. Yep.
Hey, Landon, you say in transparency, anyone can download a copy of the blockchain and look through it and verify the transactions. I don't understand that. I mean, it seems like then everyone's in your one financial business because it's kind of, when I think of Bitcoin, I think of a different international bartering system that's not monitored or regulated. My grandfather was, president of a bank, so I'm, a banker's girl. Mm-hmm. But I don't understand how, if they can download a copy and look through it and verify it, they can't change that. I don't understand that. I don't understand what you're saying there.
So it goes back to the consensus mechanism. So if someone wanted to download a copy of the blockchain and they wanted to go in and change your account, okay? Let's say they wanted to go in and change your account because they knew your account. They could make that change and they could submit that transaction to the blockchain, but it goes back to the consensus, all right? So the consensus has to agree that that transaction can take place, and no one is going to concede to that because it's not a legal transaction. It's not coming from an existing account. Like if they wanted to take away money from your account, right? They can't do that because they can't sign your account with the private keys that you hold. And even if they wanted to change the ledger, they wouldn't be able to do that because there would have to be a debit from your account to remove funds. Does that make sense? Like you have to send the funds somewhere. Someone can't just take those funds from your account. No one would concede to that because that would be an illegal transaction. The consensus mechanism would not agree to that.
Okay, so is the value common? Is the value commonly held?
I don't understand that question.
Is the value of what you're spending, because it seems like a bartering system to me in one sense, but is the value of what you and I make a we agree on a transaction in the blockchain, okay?
Mm-hmm.
If we agree on it using American currency, okay, $1 is 10 dimes, okay? I agree to pay you $1. You say I'm going to take $1. Is the value commonly held through the whole system? That's where I'm confused when I research big. It doesn't seem like there's a common how do you get a value? Or maybe I'm jumping ahead and I'll stop talking now.
No, you're not jumping ahead. So the value is one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin. It's not one Bitcoin equals $40,000 or $5 or $10. That would be comparing apples to oranges. The value would be one Bitcoin. You want to send one Bitcoin, and no matter what the US equivalent or the euro equivalent or the yuan equivalent is of that, one Bitcoin is still one Bitcoin. So that's the value that's being exchanged. You're not necessarily exchanging US dollars, although you can cash them out for US dollars. You're sending Bitcoin on the blockchain. Does that answer that? Kind of. Okay. I see Maury's got his hand up, so let's roll over to him.
Yeah, Landen, thank you. I have two questions. The first one is, why is this needed? I mean, what precipitated the creation of what you're referring to as NFTs, non-fungible tokens? I mean, what is this offering people that they didn't have or before and therefore needed?
I think as I get a little bit further, that may become a little bit more clear.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm going to answer that question as we get further into this.
Okay, great. Then the only other question, because I always want to be alert and aware of new spellings of words. How do you spell consensus?
It may be spelled wrong on my slide. Is that what you're getting at?
Well, yeah, you've got a Y there. I would have put a U, but like I say, I may be wrong.
Yeah.
I want to make sure if there's a new way to spell it, I'm more than happy to embrace it.
It's the Landen spelling. So if you want to embrace the Landen spelling, that's perfectly fine.
All right. Sorry, that's a little bit of my editing process in play. I apologize.
No worries. If you find another one, you probably will find another Landen spelling. So just be aware of that.
Okay.
Okay. So so that's blockchain in a nutshell. That doesn't necessarily have a lot to do with what we're going to talk about, but it's the foundation. So the foundation is that's the blockchain. Okay, so that's version 1. Now, let's usher in version 2. So version 2 of that is smart contracts. Smart contracts reside on the Ethereum blockchain and some other tokens, but we're going to be talking about the Ethereum blockchain. Ethereum implements all of the same things as Bitcoin does. consensus spelled correctly, immutable, transparent, all of that good stuff. But it ushers in some programmability to the tokens that reside on that network. That's what's called smart contracts. So what that means is now you have the ability to not only send funds around to different people manually, but you can start to do things automatically with those funds as well. So you can program contracts or contractual agreements now into this money or into these funds where you couldn't do that on the blockchain. So an example may be, let's say I wanted to send Tom at the beginning of every month some funds. Well, I can set up a smart contract to where it will just automatically do that until I set a date to not do that anymore, or until I pull that smart contract off. Let's say I wanted to set up certain triggers or parameters to move funds around to different accounts. Or let's say that my title to my house has been digitized and put in a smart contract so that I own that title on the Ethereum blockchain. So I can transfer via a smart contract that to another person at a certain period of time, upon death, all kinds of different things. It basically adds programmability to what we were calling Bitcoin, or the funding mechanism behind that. So now that opens up a whole different set of things that you can do on the blockchain that you couldn't do with Bitcoin or version 1 of this. This is where we get into NFTs. Tokens, or NFTs, stands for non-fungible tokens. So why do I need to understand blockchain technology? Well, it's foundational for understanding NFTs, which is the heart of what we want to talk about. It's at the heart of digital ownership, being able to prove cryptographically that you own something on the blockchain, not just say that you own it, to be able to hold the keys to that house per se and be able to unlock it and say, I own this item. No one can take it away from me unless I send it. I own it. So understanding blockchain, and then to some extent understanding being able to utilize smart contracts and the programmability of those funds is kind of foundational to understanding NFTs. So NFTs, what is an NFT? NFT, the name is abstract and doesn't make any sense. It's called a non-fungible token, which is just, it's difficult. They should have named it something else. But basically, it's just a unit of data stored on the blockchain that represents an item. That's all it is. It's just a token on the blockchain that is representative of either a digital or a physical item. So most use cases nowadays are digital images, pictures, GIFs, videos, digital items on the blockchain is what they represent. But it doesn't have to be limited to that. It can be what we're going to get into. It can be books. It can be PDFs. It can be pretty much anything you want it to be. It's a way of digital ownership of that particular item. Why non-fungible? Okay, so this is kind of a difficult concept to explain, but when we're talking about money, money is fungible, right? I can give anyone $10 and that $10, and they can give me $10 back, and they're interchangeable. It's the same thing, right? I can give someone a $10 bill and you can give me 10 $1 bills, and they represent the same thing. For these tokens, each unit is unique. Each single unit is unique. They're not necessarily interchangeable. So going back to the Bitcoin example, as Kim was saying, 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin. 1 Bitcoin doesn't necessarily equal $1, but 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin. When we're talking about NFTs, one NFT does not necessarily represent another NFT. They're not the same things. Even if you create multiple NFTs of the exact same item, of the exact same picture, of the exact same book, they're separate tokens on the blockchain, and one may be worth more than the other for whatever particular reason. So that's kind of where the non-fungible thing is. You can't interchange them equally. That doesn't necessarily matter, but that's just what the name stands for. That's what they represent. And like I alluded to earlier, they can represent digital assets. And in some cases, they can represent physical assets. Go ahead, Kim.
Landon, you can't interchange them equally. So you have no choice. If I want to trade my house, if a thing is a thing, in the real world here, if I want to trade my house for an acorn out in my yard to somebody, that's my choice. So are you saying if they're not tradable that way?
No, they are tradable. You can trade them that way, but they're not equal. So like your house is not equal to an acorn. It's not the same thing. But you could trade it like that if you wanted to. So that's kind of what it means by non-fungible. They're not, it's not that they're not tradable, it's that they're not equal in trading. They're each unique, if that makes more sense. Okay. What else do NFTs get us? Okay, so NFTs, going back to the whole blockchain thing, cryptographically speaking, you can verify that you own this particular item. You can verify without a third party who owns what particular NFT. So what does that mean? That means that if Tom writes a book and he puts it on the blockchain as an NFT, and I buy one of those copies of the books, I can verify that I own that copy by the keys that I hold to my wallet. He's going to send that to me, and I can verify that I own that copy without a third party. We can make the trade together, and we don't need anyone else to verify that I own that. Now, why is that important? Because up to now, when we're talking about trading of things or digital assets or whatever the case may be, we kind of have to have a third-party intermediary or a marketplace to verify or facilitate the trading of that. Tom puts out 1,000 copies of his book on Amazon. Amazon lists those for sale, and I buy that. It gets downloaded to my Kindle. So the third party there, the third party intermediary is Amazon, kind of verifying or facilitating the trade of that. But we don't need that in NFTs because it can go straight from one person to the other, and we don't need any third party to verify that Tom's minted those and I purchased them. So let's say Tom becomes a super famous author, and now his books are worth thousands and thousands of dollars. Well, I don't need a third party to validate that and say, yep, you own that copy. I can do that myself because I own the keys to the house. I own the keys to my own wallet, and I can verify. No one else needs to do that. That's an important part of this piece of the puzzle, is verifiable ownership without a third party. Let's take, for example, let's take maybe an easier example to understand. Let's take like paintings, for an example. So I could have a picture of a Mona Lisa behind me and say, this is an original Mona Lisa. But I would need a third party to verify that. No one would believe me unless I have some sort of a third party or a certificate of authenticity to verify that I own that. NFTs make it possible for you to verify that you own that cryptographically with the keys that you own without anybody needing to verify that, without me needing to pay anyone to authorize that or give me a certificate of authenticity. So That's an important piece of this puzzle. Does that make sense to everybody? Because I think that's one of the key things to understanding some of the benefits of this going forward.
Got a
Yeah.
It's
question.
like a
Landon.
receipt. Is it like a receipt, Landon? Verifiable ownership in the offline. Verifiable ownership is just, it's a different system of receipt.
It's kind of a receipt because the blockchain is transparent. So you can verify the transaction on the blockchain. But it's also like a set of keys because I can unlock and sign my wallet or sign a transaction that says I own this wallet. And this wallet contains all of these NFTs or all of these funds. Does that make sense?
Question, Landon.
Yep.
Just in relation to the original artwork you're talking about, maybe this will help Kim understand too. In the real world, you have one Mona Lisa original. There's many prints. Okay, prints aren't the value of an original. In this virtual world, you can have multiple originals, and they could all be different values, or they could be the same values. Correct?
Yep, you can have multiple well, they're not really copies because they're each individually unique.
Exactly.
They're each individual. But let's
Right.
just say they're the exact image or the exact same picture. But number one, the first one minted, may be the most valuable of all, for example.
Okay.
But
That's
yeah,
different from the real world where can only be one original.
right.
Okay.
So verifiable ownership is a big key to kind of understanding where this may go in the future. Right now, a lot of this revolves around digital items, mostly images or original digital art, things of that nature, but there's very few restrictions on what can be tokenized. There's not a whole lot that is tokenized right now, but as far as the blockchain is concerned, there's very few restrictions on what can be tokenized. So that kind of opens up or should open up thinking into publishing, books, you know, whatever the case may be in the future. And then there's a set of permanency to this. So if I own something, it's forever mine. It can't necessarily be destroyed. It can't necessarily be taken away from me unless someone steals the keys to my wallet, steals the digital keys or password or private key, however you want to look at it, to my wallet. Unless the entire internet across the world goes down, it can't necessarily cease to exist. So there's differences between that in the digital and the physical world because a book can be taken away from you pretty easily. A book can be burned, lost, stolen, whatever the case may be. There's some permanency to this. So now that we understand a little bit about NFTs, let's start to think about how that impacts people as writers or authors or content creators. So not necessarily impacting you right now. The use cases aren't necessarily impacting you right now, but let's look 3 to 5 years into the future and maybe look 3 to 5 years into the past and see what has happened in digital publishing, indie publishing in general in the last 5 years. Where has the industry gone from? And let's look into the future and maybe put some thought into where this industry may be going 5 years down the road, and how we as authors, you as authors or writers or content creators make a living, make money. So let's talk about use cases. Let's talk about copyright issues. Let's talk about people expanding their digital library. Let's talk about maybe what the next iteration of the Kindle device may be, which I don't think it'll be a Kindle device. I don't think Amazon will own it. Let's also talk about rewards, perks, different things that you can give your readers, and the connection between your readers and you as we bring NFTs into the landscape here. Okay, so copyright. Let's talk about copyright a little bit. Copyrights arise automatically when an original copyrightable work is fixed in a medium of expression. The bundle of rights that's included, the bundle of rights include the exclusive right for you as the creator to copy that work, to distribute or publish it, to create derivative works off of that, and then to perform or display those works in public. And there's a basket of other things in there. But copyright isn't just copyright for physical products. It's also copyright for digital products as well. So when John creates a piece of work, all of those same things apply to digital artwork. And all of those same rights will apply to creating or minting an NFT or a digital copy of your book. But they're arguably easier to enforce now, because it's very difficult for you to prove that someone doesn't have permission to own your book. It's pretty difficult to prove that. If we're talking about NFTs and we go back to the open ledger system, it's pretty easy to prove that someone shouldn't have a copy of your book. They shouldn't have downloaded it illegally, because they would be able to, or they would have to prove that they have the rights to the wallet that holds that NFT. And if they can't do that, then they shouldn't have access to that. Not only that, but it makes it pretty difficult to steal that stuff. Like Kim was talking earlier, it's nearly impossible to do that. But they could always, download an illegal PDF of your book somewhere. But NFTs make copyright laws arguably easier to enforce, in my opinion, because of that being able to prove that you have ownership of those things. So let's think about where digital libraries may be going. Think about your Kindle as a digital library, except with NFTs, there's a strong enforcement behind ownership and transferability of those items. So an owner can do whatever they want with an NFT. They can do whatever they want with a copy of the works that they own. They can keep them. They can send them off to other people. They can resell them on a third-party marketplace, or a secondary marketplace. They can pretty much do whatever they want because they own the copy of that. It doesn't go through a third-party medium or an intermediary. So you think about a Kindle device or a Kindle book, you kind of own that and you kind of don't. Because if Amazon were to ever go belly up, which I don't think is ever going to happen, or not happen in the foreseeable future, but there have been companies that have sold digital goods that have gone belly up. Well, what happens to those digital goods because they're stored in their environment? You lose access to them. You don't own them anymore. With NFTs, you have complete ownership, regardless of any sort of third-party intermediary. So you could do whatever you want with those, including resell them, make money off of them yourself. So this may be a little stretch thinking into the future here. I know a lot of people who don't own physical copies of books anymore. I mean, they have physical copies of books, but they don't buy things in physical copies anymore. They buy all their stuff digital. And we can see over the past 5 years that that's the way that the industry has shifted, right? So most people are buying Kindle books now as opposed to physical books. What if 5 years down the road, there's some devices that make displaying your digital library or your digital bookcase like cool, right? Like what if you have a digital or a virtual library in your home that you can lend books to other people? I don't know, I'm just thinking outside the box here, but you can do that outside of any sort of intermediary or secondary marketplace with some of this stuff. Yeah, so I kind of covered all of this stuff. outside of a marketplace. You own the stuff. It's not connected with any third party. It also opens up different kinds of connections with you as the content creator or the author or the writer and your readers, because you're not necessarily going through any sort of a marketplace now. You have a one-to-one connection. We talked about this a couple meetings ago. When you make a sale on Amazon, you don't know who buys that from you. Amazon has all that data. You don't have any of that data. So you can't necessarily connect with your readers in that way when you make a sale. This opens up a whole new world for that, because you can connect with your readers. You can connect with whoever's purchasing your items. You can create a limited edition run of your books. Let's just say 100 run of your books made as NFTs. And you could say something like, whoever buys this limited edition run of NFTs will also get a physical signed copy of this book, and I will mail that to you. Whoever buys this limited edition prints of my book or NFTs of my book will get forever special access to behind the scenes connection with me. You can get early access to chapters of my next books. You get early access to a platform where we can chat together, or we could do video chats. This kind of opens up a whole new connection with your reader that going through the de facto marketplace of Amazon does not allow you to do. And then as the owner of these, as someone who's purchasing these, you have complete ownership of that. So you can resell that book to anyone that you want to. You can't do that with your Kindle books, or at least they haven't allowed you to do that yet. And then the other thing, and this may be where the rubber hits the road for a lot of creators and writers, is perpetual royalties. So this goes back to the programmability of some of this stuff on the smart contract. Let's say you create and release 100 copies of your book, or 1,000 copies of your book, whatever it is. You put them out there for $10 and you sell those 1,000 copies. Okay, well, you've just made $10,000 if my math is correct. But you also tack on a royalty for any additional sales of those books in perpetuity. So let's say that's an additional 10% of the sales price of that book. So you sell those 1,000 copies for $10, and let's say you gain a lot of notoriety, right? And you become a popular author. Let's say people start to resell those books on another marketplace for $20 now. Well, if someone sells a copy of your book for $20 and you've put a royalty on that book in perpetuity, you're going to make $2 on that sale forever, as many times as that book sells. There's no marketplace in the digital landscape that does this anywhere. But this kind of perpetuity, royalty structure, connection with readership is possible now with some of these smart contracts, this programmability. The sky is the limit to some of this stuff now. Is there any questions? Like, Moore, you got your hand up. So
Yeah,
go ahead.
I'm trying to track with you here, and I apologize if I'm stumbling along the way. Okay, I create a book, and using your example, I create 1,000 copies. I put it out in the marketplace in this method, and I sell all 1,000 books. I make 10 grand, and then you're telling me that those 1,000 individuals that now have a copy of my book may take it digitally to a secondary market and sell it for whatever price they want to. And I'm going to get a royalty on that. And if so, how is that tracked? How am I going to know what any one of those 1,000 people who bought my book? It's like when I send somebody a copy of my book, a Kindle copy of my book, or a Mobi copy or whatever in an email, they get it. They got it. PDF, they can now open it. They got the whole book right there. how do I know that they don't, how do I track whether they forward that on to somebody else or not? How's this going to work?
Okay. So great questions. Yes, you will get royalties in perpetuity because it all is programmed into the smart contract. Each additional sale will give you 10% or 5% or whatever, and it's tracked in that open ledger system. And it will be sent back to the creator of that NFT. It's all tied to, let's just call it a wallet address. Okay. Let's just call it your address, your wallet address. So you make the original sale, the money goes back to you. You make someone else resells that, 5% of that goes back to you because you're the original seller of that. You're the creator of that NFT. And that's all programmed in to this smart contract stored on the open ledger.
It almost sounds like, unless I'm missing something, it almost sounds like an infallible multi-level marketing opportunity. I mean, every multi-level marketing company I've ever heard of, Amway and any one of the millions that you want to talk about, basically the same way. You sell, you get salespeople, they sell a product to somebody, and then you try to convince that person, if they like the product, to start becoming a seller as well, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what this has potential to become?
I guess you could look at it that way. But you're not necessarily going to recruit sellers under you. You're just going to hope that someone likes your
They
book
like your
enough
book.
to
Exactly.
pass it on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
And there's
Okay.
one other key I want to mention here, Landon, before you go any farther. And I've done a lot of research since we've talked last.
Mm-hmm.
The key with this entire system is people knowing you exist. If you go in and you're a nobody and you post your book or your piece of art or whatever the case may be, there may not be anybody that's going to ever come across that. You'll not sell a thing. You still need some kind of notoriety or subscription list, or you need people to follow you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's
just
always
wanna
going to be
mention-
that marketing aspect. Yeah.
Can I jump in too? I can't find the symbol to raise my hand.
Sure.
Yeah. When I talked to Landon and John about this idea that I had for an NFT, I wasn't thinking of an NFT as any kind of investment. I'm thinking of strictly something to help my book sale. And my idea was to get the book out there, sell it through Amazon, whatever, but give people in the, I guess, the marketplace who know of my book an opportunity to produce a custom, unique book cover for my book. And there are ways of doing that when you set the the logic up to mint it. But each cover, it'll be a limited edition, 25, 50 unique covers that would go in front of my book that they've already purchased. And that's what I was thinking. That would just be a way to, get a little closer contact with my readers, and also to give them something kind of special there. Each cover, through the programming behind it, through minting it, would be unique. The colors would be unique. The fonts would be different, no duplication. And if they wanted to have this unique limited edition cover, then they'd be able to purchase it if that's what they wanted. And that's all that I was looking at when I was exploring NFTs. Just make it, give them a special book cover. Take the cover I've already designed and tweak it a little bit from instance to instance, and let them have that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done.
And then you fell down the rabbit hole, which is NFTs, and now you're in Wonderland, right?
Right. Yeah, there's some things to work out, but I'm aware of the blockchain, but I just saw the blockchain as just a facilitator of the transaction,
Right.
a way to record it,
Mm-hmm.
and to make it ironclad, make it an ironclad sale.
Mm-hmm. Sherry, you have your hand up.
All right, guys. Yeah, so this is reminding me, it's as if we're able to turn ebooks into print books, because what I've always loved about paper, I've told people you can't pick up ebooks at the thrift store, but this allows you to resell. What I'm concerned about is, why would I want to limit the edition of my book to an arbitrary number? It sounds kind of mercenary to want people to resell it instead of buying it from me, and to push up the price because there's only so many copies out there. So if somebody else new wants it, then that somebody who already owns it has to sell it. So what's up with that, and how is that something that fits in with my Christian worldview?
In my case, it was just to the book starts being purchased normally, and whoever wants to buy one through whatever distributorship can buy it. It's just the book cover, unique book cover. If they like the book that much, they might want to have their own specialized cover with maybe me signing it as part of the contract. And that's all I was looking at.
Because
and also,
you're an artist?
Oh, well, John Colada in this case would be the artist. I would be the author. But I saw that as a way to make some extra money so that I can print my books off and give them away to different places that I visit, or, to other people that I see having a need to get the information in the book. That's been one of my goals ever since I sat down to try to become an author. I just want to be able to give it away. I'm not in it to make money. Money is nice, but that's not what I'm about.
Sherry, you can do both on this. This is what I think is confusing to a lot of people. You can be in the physical world, sell your books on Amazon, and do the same thing you're doing right now, but you can also do the same thing as an NFT in this virtual world, do both ends.
Yeah.
One drawback that I've read so far is, and this is only for really established famous artists and stuff as an example, is a lot of people don't like to see, as a collector, they don't like to see their famous artists going into that virtual world because it seems to degrade the value of the art to them. So there's been some negative on that end of it, which doesn't have to do with the books.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah.
But it's both worlds.
Yeah, because artists have always had limited editions, even on their prints, on purpose to push up the value. But for me, my book, I wrote it because I want the message out there. So I can't imagine saying I'll only let 1,000 people have it.
You're not. You're keeping that in the physical world. Sell 1 billion copies in the physical world through Amazon, but give the opportunity to those virtual purchasers to have that original NFT, which has a totally different value in another world. Am I correct on that, Landen?
Yeah. So let's say you want to attach something to the sale of the book, something that connects you to your readers, or something that gives them extra value or connection to you, a perks program or something along those lines. I would think of it that way, as opposed to trying to limit the editions of your book.
Yeah, because I only have so much time. So if one person has it, then they would need to sell it to somebody else. Although I'm not excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at it in a number of different ways. From going back to your question, from a Christian worldview, I wouldn't necessarily do something like this to artificially inflate the price of what you're doing. I would look at something like this to establish a perks program, a closer connection with few of your readers, to establish some sort of maybe a close inner circle of people that really want to support you or cheer you on or do something along those lines, where you can provide value to them and they can provide value to you. That's kind of where I would take some of this stuff.
That makes more sense.
Yeah. Not necessarily to just say, I'm going to be this, look at me, I'm going to be this grand author and I'm only going to print 100 copies of my books, and good luck if you get one.
Yeah, that was really weird with the way you were explaining it. I was like, what? Why would I do that?
I mean, you can do that, and that may apply more to the art world, if you wanted to do limited editions. You can do that if you wanted to, but I wouldn't necessarily take that approach. I would I see this as a way to connect more with readers, which is what I'm detailing in this slide.
Okay,
You
thanks.
attach signed physical copies to anyone who buys a digital copy of your NFT. You can create a rewards program where they get early access to the next book that you're doing. You can create a members only, some sort of a room where you do like live streams where you can connect with your readers and get valuable feedback on maybe what your next book is going to be, where you wouldn't have that opportunity to do that before, or you would be limited in that opportunity. And then you could give away stuff. Like you could say something like, if you buy this edition of my book, then you will permanently get 50% off the next books that I put out forever, just by supporting me. Right. So those are the kinds of things that I think are more valuable in this space than just saying, I'm going to put out 100 copies of my books and they're going to be worth thousands and I'm going to get rich.
Landen, just in anticipation of your presentation, I did a little research and my mind was boggled when I discovered that Jack Dorsey's first ever tweet, when he created the Twitter, whatever it's called, was in an NFT format, kept and recently sold for $2.9 million. I mean, that boggles my mind.
Yeah. Well, that's the way that the world is taking some of this stuff, right? That is the world that puts value on some of this stuff, that it's a tweet, right? Yeah, I mean, it may be monumental in that space because it's the first thing that ever went out on that platform that's now worth hundreds of millions of dollars or whatever. But as Christian authors, I think that this opens up avenues. Technology opens up avenues like this that didn't exist before, is kind of what I wanted to get at. Not that a lot of this stuff exists yet, but to just kind of pay attention to where some of this stuff is going. And as Christians, see how we can use this technology to further the gospel, to connect with people on a one-on-one basis to where we may not have been able to do that before. Let me answer some of Kathleen's questions because she asked a couple questions over here. So she asked, like, what happens if the internet goes down and data is wiped clean? Where's the verification? So that's the kryptonite of this, right? So if the internet goes down across the entire world, there's a world catastrophe, none of this stuff exists anymore. You're not going to care about NFTs or digital books for that matter, right? That would be the worst case scenario. And then she also asks, who holds the contract? So the contract is on the blockchain. That's the programmability, right? That's the code that's built into this version 2 blockchain. It's in that ledger. The contract that is held between the buyer and the seller, the purchaser and the minter, is on the blockchain. Programmed in there, can't ever be changed. It's immutable, all of that good stuff. Hopefully that answers some of your questions.
What makes it so that it can never be changed?
It's the immutable nature of the blockchain. So once it goes into the blockchain, then that's where that consensus mechanism comes into place. You would have to have thousands of people. You'd have to have thousands of Bitcoin nodes or Ethereum nodes or whatever the blockchain is across the world to agree that this particular contract needs to be changed. And if you're trying to do that maliciously, you're not going to be able to do that because no one's going to agree that that is going to need to take place.
So this is unhackable.
I'm not going to say it's unhackable. I'm going to say that Bitcoin has been around for 20 years now and has never been hacked. Ethereum's been around for 15 years now, and has never been hacked. I'll say that with quotation marks because there have been some stuff where they, without getting too technical, there have been some stuff where they have changed things. But as far as like someone going in and hacking or changing maliciously the code in a smart contract or giving themselves 1 million Bitcoin so that they can become rich just out of thin air, that has never happened. So unhackable is not a good term to use, but so far has not been. So
So I
Yeah,
have one
and-
more question. Who makes Bitcoin?
well, no one knows who the original creator was. There's a pseudonym that created it. There's a certain amount of Bitcoin that is minted every every block that is minted. A certain amount of Bitcoin is created, and there will only ever be, I believe it's 21 million Bitcoin that exist. No more than that. And the creation halves every 3 years. So I think every block there's 15 Bitcoin minted or something like that. And then sometime next year it will halve to 7.5. And then 3 years after that, it will be 3.25. So the halving continues until year 2100 or something like that. And then it's capped. So it's deflationary. There can only ever be 21 million that exist. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I would offer, guys. I mean, Landen is killing it on this presentation, and when we worry about like what if the internet went down, no bank has a physical ledger of your bank account. Like it's all stored in a cloud. And if we think, well, my bank is secure, but Bitcoin's not, I mean, like those days disappeared a long, long time ago. And so while this is new technology, if we're considering 20 years new, you're the bank doesn't keep physical copies of your ledger, and it's all in a cloud somewhere. So it's not like this is just going to quickly go away. In fact, it's the exact opposite. But it's not necessarily less secure than what's going on with your bank account right now.
Yep.
I think
There's a lot-
Landon's going to have to do another hour on this. There's no way he's going to fit all this information in this hour.
Yeah. I could probably answer Q&A on this for another hour. Let me wrap up here because I think I only have a couple slides left, and I'll hit the high points. So all of this is to say, so let's imagine 5 years down the road where digital publishing will be, where indie publishing will be. What if Amazon doesn't control the digital books like they do right now? What does that mean for me as a writer, right? If I don't operate in that space anymore and I have more control over what I create, that's a good thing for me, right? What if I could earn perpetual royalties on my book sales? That's a good thing for me too, right? I have to feed my family. I want to make money off of the things that I create, not necessarily want to get super rich, but if I'm not doing this to feed my family, then I'm going to have to do something else. So making money is part of the thing here. What if I had a stronger connection with my readers? What if I had the ability to connect with them in a unique way that benefits both of us, that opens up opportunities to get my message out to new people, to connect with new people in different ways, where I'm limited to do that right now when I operate in the current ecosystem outside of Amazon? I can do that on different social media platforms and other things, but that's also limited in some nature as well. What if there was better mechanisms for enforcing digital ownership and copyright protection, right? I believe some of this stuff is going to usher in a better way to combat copyright protection and digital ownership. That's just my opinion, but I believe that's going to happen. Generally speaking, some people may argue with this, but in general, I believe the digital versions of things are better in a lot of ways than the physical, right? So you think production of physical books, right? It's easier to produce digital copies of that. It's easier to circulate digital copies of that than it is physical books. The usability. It's easier to operate a Kindle and all of the things that a Kindle brings you as far as font sizes and search and storing multiple books on a device than it is to hold a physical book. And then cost, right? All of the costs associated with creating a physical book, a digital book, decrease because it's just easier to create digital items. So all of that stuff, I believe, should allow us or should help us to cautiously think about where NFTs are going to be 3 to 5 years from now. Be on the lookout for when you see NFTs, when you see things that are being created or marketplaces that pop up for NFTs, when you see what I believe will happen in the next 5 years is a marketplace for publications. There's already a few that are starting to come out, but marketplaces for publications that facilitate authors and writers and the creation of NFTs, selling of NFTs, that transaction, all of that stuff. Be on the lookout for some of that stuff. Don't just say, oh, well, that's a fad. It's never going to happen. If you were to do that 10 years ago when Amazon said, we're going to sell everything in the entire world on our platform, not just books, right? Now here we are 10 years and you can order anything that your heart's desire off of that platform and get it to your house in 2 days. If you would have said 10 years ago that would never happen, you would be wrong right now. Just be open about where some of this stuff will go and see how you can apply that to your authorship, your writing, your readership. And like John said, it's not a this or that. It's a this and that. It's how can I use all of this stuff to be a better reader, to be a better writer, to connect with my audience better, to get my message out better, to influence the world better. How can I use all of this stuff to my advantage? This is just a conclusion slide that kind of details what we went over, but I'm out of time. We could probably do Q&A for another hour. I'm okay to stick around if you guys have more questions. If you need to drop off, feel free. But that's all that I have in the slideshow for today. Kim has her hand up.
I do, with 2 questions. I hope I'm not dragging people down with my inability to connect here a little bit, but I do have 2 questions, Landon.
Mm-hmm.
One is a presumption, being a practical. The last time I looked, Crawford Electric down the road did not take Bitcoin. I don't get how that works. Perhaps we could do a training on that if anyone's interested in that, because everything I've read, you know, as a stock investor and stuff, there's a disconnect on whether or not to even invest in Bitcoin in the system. So that's one thing. I just a comment, but then I wanted to know, and you've kind of answered it too, but give me 1, 2, 3, because I'm a practical girl. So give me 1, 2, 3 things I can do and that today. One thing you said is to be aware of the marketplace, okay, and be open to this kind of change. But what I like to be in on ground floors of things. I'm a startup person. So, you know, how do I know that I'm catching it here and looking at this opportunity?
So you're asking like a couple of practical steps that you can
Couple
take?
of practical things, right? Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there's already quite a few marketplaces that have popped up for digital art.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to learn more about how those work, I would suggest going to OpenSea.io. That's a digital marketplace for NFT art. There's a handful of them that have popped up. So you could just Google, you know, NFT marketplaces or something like that. But OpenSea is by far the biggest one. That is a digital art space. So if you go there, be prepared for all kinds of art. If you understand my tongue-in-cheek comment about that.
I do.
Okay.
I do.
You can explore, you know, how they work. You
Okay.
know, tutorials on how to create an Ethereum wallet, mint your own works, list things, buy things. That would be some educational stuff where you could practically go and learn.
Okay.
And most of that stuff would apply to publishing. If you wanted to put a digital book, I don't think they allow that on their marketplace as far as digital books, but it would be basically the same mechanism or principle to create and mint digital books.
Okay. That helps. Thanks. Thank you for
Mhm.
this. It's very, very interesting.
Kim, also, I just checked. I've been a member of PayPal since probably 2000, and I do all my transactions with customers and clients.
Mhm.
They now have the ability to use cryptocurrency. So another thing that's showing that the movement in that direction.
Okay. Thank you.
One thing that I didn't include on this that I would kind of like to point out is when you see a lot of this stuff become mainstream adopted, you are not going to necessarily know that is what you're participating in. So as technology matures, it becomes less and less technical to the average day user. You do not have to know how HTTP protocol and the DNS system work to browse the internet. But that is what is happening under the scenes when you type in google.com. All of that stuff happens behind the scenes, but you don't have to understand how any of that stuff works. As this technology matures, that is what is going to happen. You are going to start using this stuff on different platforms without even knowing that you're necessarily using it. So just kind of be aware of that and on the lookout and how you can use that to your advantage. For Kim, like yourself, who is interested in how some of this stuff works, I wouldn't get discouraged if some of this stuff is too complex to get, because I've been studying this and really diving into this stuff for probably almost 10 years now. And some of this stuff is really complicated to understand. So don't necessarily look at this as I have to understand everything about NFTs and how they work and how the blockchain works and all of that stuff. You can understand some of this stuff at a high level, but just know that as a lot of this stuff gets implemented, it will become more obscure and you will just be using it without knowing that you're using it. So hopefully that kind of alleviates some people's anxiety about understanding or needing to understand how some of this stuff works.
Shimri.
Yeah, she's had her hand up for a while. I'm sorry, Shimri. I saw it, but I forgot.
Oh, I think she left. Okay, in case anybody is interested in it, I've got the transcript of this whole thing. So if you want it in black and white so that you can go back and see what Landen says and keep bringing questions about it, let's do that, because if this is a thing that's coming, then in my mind, we need to stay up with it. Okay? Because PayPal, when it first started, was, oh, it's never going to work. You know, all these companies are like that. So, okay, I'm going to put the transcript up with the video. And is Nancy still here?
Yep, I'm here.
Nancy, what's scheduled for next week?
Next week, we have a program regarding blogs with 3 of us discussing that, but we could possibly push that out and let question and answers if Landen's free.
What do you think, Landen?
Or we can give him the week after that.
Let me look. I'd have to look at my calendar and see what the wife's work schedule is. If she's not working, then she's doing school with the kids. If she's working, then school falls to me. So let me get back with you on that.
Okay.
We could probably fit it in one of the next 2 weeks.
I
as
will
long
be
as
looking
free.
forward to the blog, though.
Yeah, everything we do is important in one way or another.
Right.
The reason that I like to try to keep the Q&As close to the original presentation is so that it doesn't get away from people.
Mhm.
So Landon, just let Nancy know what you can do, and then Nancy, if you can adjust it however we need to.
I'll check with the other two and see what they can do as well. So
Okay.
we'll figure it out.
All
Let me
right.
just add one more thing before we go. I
Sure.
found actually quite a few YouTube videos talking about NFTs for book authors, and for take it with a grain of salt if you watch them, but it's good for just getting some background, some exposure, to the whole concept of how NFTs can be applied to your books as an author.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said be careful there,
Oh,
because
yeah.
some of these people on there, I don't know if there's any guidelines at all on YouTube.
Yeah,
But
they have
that's,
their own agendas out there.
yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
they can say whatever they want, so you have to be a little
Right.
careful. All right, everybody. Wonderful presentation, Landon. Appreciate it very much. Have a
Thanks,
good
Thanks,
week.
Landon.
See you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Okay. John, I'll get in touch with you. I saw your message. I think. How do I leave?